I see what Alberta is doing right now as its own little rebellion, and it's not just today. We've been doing this. We had an election in 2012 and further back, but it is a way of saying, hey, let's make it relevant. And Alberta is really setting an example. I hope that other provinces would actually take the opportunity to follow our lead, and let's make it more of a democratic process as opposed to an appointment, which so many people in Canada see as really just a cushy place for a lot of career politicians to kind of hang on the taxpayers' dollar for maybe a little too long.
Adam Sos here for Rebel News, and with the Senate election in Alberta coming up on Monday, we are going to join two candidates for that position who are going to share about the role of Senate and the election process moving forward.
All three candidates are former PPC candidates in the last elections. I'm asking Albertans who want change from the establishment parties to support these three candidates who will bring a different voice from Alberta in Ottawa. And I'm urging the Prime Minister to name the next senator from Alberta from among those who will be chosen by Albertans in this election.
So cities across Alberta are off to the polls again, and one of the decisions they have to make is a Senate election decision. They will have an opportunity to name up to 3 names, and I've got 2 people who are on that list representing the People's Party of Canada. If you could first introduce yourselves. I suppose many of these folks probably know you from our election coverage, but if you could introduce yourself anyways.
Sure, Nadine Wellwood, and I was People's Party of Canada candidate for Banff Airdrie in 2021 and 2019. And of course, my name is on the ballot for the Senate candidate here in Alberta.
Yeah, and my name is Kelly Lorencz, and I was the 2021 candidate for Red Deer Mountain View, and I was the 2019 candidate for the PPC in Calgary Nose Hill.
Wonderful. So I suppose first off, we can get into, in a fundamental way, what the role of the Senate is. I think we know it's kind of a sober second thought, as John A. MacDonald put it, but in practical terms, what does the Senate do on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think that sober second thought to legislation. I think it is really, truly, it is the upper house, 105 senators, but its primary role should be, I think, more of an investigative body to make sure that legislation and to hold government accountable. That's really what I would like to see it as being, more than just a second sober thought and a rubber stamp, but more a place where questions can be, the hard questions can be asked from more of a nonpartisan standpoint.
Wonderful. And what does the election process, I know it looks different from province to province, often it's just a nomination, but here in Alberta we do have an opportunity to actually put forward names for nomination. So what does the general process look like for becoming a senator?
The process is pretty much the same, really. You put your application in, and we have support with Maxime, which is great. And it gives us an opportunity to speak to Albertans right across the province, and that's the biggest difference that I find, that I may have the opportunity to travel, talk to Albertans, and really get to hear what they have to say and be able to represent them in the Senate.
One of the interesting things on that is Alberta is the only province that chooses to elect its Senate's candidates. So, I see what Alberta is doing right now as its own little rebellion, and it's not just today. We've been doing this. We had an election in 2012 and further back, but it is a way of saying, hey, let's make it relevant. And Alberta is really setting an example. I hope that other provinces would actually take the opportunity to follow our lead. And let's make it more of a democratic process as opposed to an appointment, which so many people in Canada see as really just a cushy place for a lot of career politicians to kind of hang on the taxpayers' dollar for maybe a little too long.
Certainly, yeah. I suppose one of the other sort of conversations that's coming up surrounding this ballot on the vote is not only the nominations of potential Senate candidates, but also discussion of equalization and a number of other factors which the government is using effectively, the government of Alberta, to confirm that they do have the mandate of the people, that there needs to be a review of equalization, and furthermore that we want our senators that we pick nominated. The test is ultimately if Justin Trudeau respects that, or if he refuses to have conversations on equalization, and if he just decides to appoint his own senator anyways. How much of a sort of a litmus test for Alberta and our place in Canada do you think this is?
I think this is a big litmus test for the province. I think electing the Senate, if our Prime Minister chooses to ignore this, he's not ignoring politicians, he's not ignoring political parties, he's actually ignoring the Albertan people themselves, because it's the Albertan people that are getting out and they're voting for the individuals named and their choice to represent them in Alberta. This is not, hey, I'm going to represent, I want the Conservative Party to get in because they're beating out, the Prime Minister. And it's not political as much as it's more of a job interview, resume, who's the individual, and they get to kind of park. You don't have to split the vote. They get to put the party lines aside. And so I think if the Prime Minister chooses to ignore this, I think he does so at his own peril.
And in sort of pragmatic terms, people can vote for 3 people. Are those 3 names then nominated and put forward? I believe there's 1 available Senate spot for Alberta right now. So are those 3 names put forward? Is it 2 presently?
Well, there's 1 that'll be retiring here at the end of October.
Okay.
So there'll be 2 seats available at that time.
Okay, gotcha. And then so from the names that are put forward at that point, the hope is that Justin Trudeau would do the right thing and appoint the people that Albertans have selected?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We hope that Trudeau has the courage to listen to the people of Alberta. History in the past has told us that he does not have that courage to listen to the people of Alberta, and that's what we're advocating for. We want people's voices heard, not just Alberta, but right across Canada, and we need that common sense approach in the Senate, but not just in the Senate, we need it in the House as well, and it's that accountability.
And then again, Albertans are very practical people, so I'll ask in practical terms, what can a senator do for Alberta? I think, as you mentioned, maybe for some time now, the senators have been career politicians, but senators can have a significant influence and exercise their voice freely. They're not subject to a party whip. What can a senator from Alberta do for Albertans?
I think they can truly be the voice for Albertans. They can truly, they have the freedom, the flexibility to be able to speak what needs to be said. They're not tied to party lines. They're not having to follow along, whatever the dictates of a party leader specifies. So I think it truly is, and the big thing for me is be opposition. So what we've seen across Canada right now is we don't have any opposition, whether it's freedom and rights of the Charter, this COVID, whether it's equalization. There's nobody speaking up on behalf of Alberta. Nobody. Even the Conservative Party of Canada. If you try to speak up in support right now of oil and gas, you're basically told that's not in line with our green new policy, and you could be booted out. So, there's a lot of people across the country, in Ontario, in Newfoundland and Labrador, that support Albertans, but they don't ever get a chance to hear our concerns. A lot of people see it as being whiny. We're not being whiny. We have legitimate concerns that nobody brings forward, and or we're silenced or quieted through other political parties. And this truly, through the Senate being nonpartisan, being that investigative body, being that second sober thought, we truly get to represent Alberta and the people and our concerns. And, to be honest, what's good for Alberta is honestly good for the rest of Canada.
Yeah, certainly. And I know that there are frequently conversations, whether we're talking about the general election or a Senate election, about the lack of seats in the West. But as you mentioned, senators, they can speak independently. They're not just subject to their party lines, so they can make a real difference. Finally, to each of you, I suppose, if elected to the Senate, if you give me the first thing, the number one priority that you would work on, that you would commit your career to on behalf of Albertans or on behalf of Canada at large.
Well, there's so much actually at this point right now. Equalization, pipelines, getting Alberta's economy back online. Alberta, the oil and gas industry is the heart of Canada, and we need to start advocating for our oil and gas industry and moving that forward.
Yeah, I'd like to start by legitimizing the government that we have. So for me, it's about, our freedoms, our charters and rights. It is also about fiscal responsibility, which, right now we have supply chain issues on a global scale that are happening. Equalization, of course, our oil and gas industry, which I think all falls under the economics. And there's so much that we could do. I think those were the 2 areas that I'd start with, is economy and our freedoms and rights.
Well, I want to thank Kelly and Nadine for coming to speak with us, as well as Maxime Bernier for stopping in town here in Airdrie to make that announcement. And as always, I want to thank you all for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos. We've seen very little coverage of the Senate election coming up here in Alberta. As always, Rebel News is telling those important stories that matter to you. If you want to help us, go to realreporters.ca.